So we actually get to talk about the square root of negative numbers. So we can't find any number that when we multiply by itself will give you a negative number. So we have used imaginary numbers. So we call I the square root of -1. So in these problems, when we have like the square root of -9, that equals the square root of -1, which is I, times the square root of 9, which is 3. So this will be I times 3, and we always write I last in this case. So that's the square root of -9. The square root of -49 is going to be 7I. So we have the square root of -1 times the square root of 49, which is 7I. And we are multiplying them together. So we get 21I squared. And since I is equal to the square root of -1, when we square it, we get -1. So we basically have 21 times -1, which is a -21. So for our first answer, we're going to put a -21. For the second answer, because we're dividing and only one of them is negative, we can put it all under the square root. And we have the square root of -12. So that is equal to the square root of -1 times, and I like to write 12 as 2 times 2 times 3, because the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So I have 2, that comes out here. That one is going to, square root of -1 is I. 3 doesn't have a pair, so it's square root of 3. And that's what we type for our answer, is 2I square root of 3. All right, let's do another one. So, let's see. 81 divided by 3 is 27. So we're going to have the square root of -81 over -3 equals square root of 27. And I believe the negatives will cancel because that would be I divided by I. So that would just cancel out. So this is going to be square root of 3 times 3 times 3. So that's 3 square roots of 3. So let's type that in, see what we end up with. 3 square roots of 3. But when we're multiplying here, so 32 is 5 2's multiplied. So the square root of 2, that's the first one. And then 32 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And we also have a -1 in there, just put at the end. So that's our I. We have 1, 2 times 2 times 2. So it will be 2 times 2 times 2 times I. So we have 8I will be our final answer here. And let's go ahead and do one more. So 24 divided by 8 is 3. The negatives will cancel. We get the square root of 3. We're not going to cancel these negatives because it's there's 2 of them. So we're going to pull out a -1. Well, let's see. We have square root of -2 is equal to I times the square root of 2. The square root of -15 is equal to I square root of 15. So we're going to have, we're multiplying these. So I root 2 times I root 15. You can multiply what's on the outside, I squared, which is -1. You can multiply what's inside, square root of 30. These can't simplify anymore. So we're going to type negative square root of 30. So we type negative because I squared is equal to -1. Okay, that's the end of the